I am not good at video games. Anyone who has seen the background gameplay for my videos knows this, and my friends with whom I play Valorant and other competitive shooters know this best. Despite spending countless hours on them and using them as my go-to leisure activity, I am just not good at games. And that's okay. But for some reason, despite the fact that I know I'm not very good, I always find myself drawn towards difficult games. I play mostly skill-focused competitive games when I'm playing multiplayer titles, such as shooters like Valorant or an array of fighting games that I will never fully understand. And when I play single-player titles, it's no different. There is something about that challenge that I love. Even if I know I may never be able to 100% it, or in some cases I might not even be able to beat it, I still like playing it from time to time to chip away at the proverbial mountain of difficult gameplay. One mountain that I've been obsessed with lately is Celeste. Celeste is a game about a girl who climbs a literal mountain, and it has been eating into both my free time and my work time because I just can't put it down. Now, Celeste is not new to me. I've had the game since it released on the Switch, and I beat it a long time ago. For those unfamiliar, Celeste's story spans 7 chapters for the main arc. However, there's an optional 8th chapter that's even more challenging than 7, and in 2019, they released a free DLC 9th chapter that was designed with high-level speed tech in mind, and this is by far the most difficult challenge that the game has to offer. So, if I already beat the main story, what has me so obsessed? That would be the infamous Chapter 9. When I first bought Celeste, I knew that I was getting myself into a big challenge that I would be happy just to beat. No extras, no bonus levels, no Chapter 8. I felt that if I could just make it to Chapter 7 and finish the main story, I could put the game down satisfied and move on to the next game. And that's exactly what I did. At first. After conquering the challenging final chapter, I took some time off the game, but it wasn't long before I found myself back at it trying to go for all the collectible strawberries. After I successfully got all of the strawberries, I tackled Chapter 8, and to my surprise, I beat it. To sum up my experience with the game, suffice it to say that every time I think I've reached my limit, I always find my way back to Celeste, and I always make it further than I did before. However, even after I had proven my skills with collecting all the base game strawberries, and even after I had made my way through the core in Chapter 8, I still never thought that I would have it in me to make it all the way through Chapter 9. But that all changed recently on another sleepless night where I found myself watching Celeste speedruns done by extremely talented runners at GDQ. Something about the quick and precise tech combined with the absolute genius of Celeste level design really ignited a passion inside of me to complete the insurmountable task and beat Chapter 9. So that is what I have been doing for the past 2 weeks. I have been throwing my head against the wall over and over in an attempt to brute force my way through Chapter 9. And I have never loved Celeste more. What I love so much about this game is its famous philosophy on death. Anyone who has played Celeste knows that it treats death like a learning tool, rather than as a punishment. Levels are designed in such a way that dying is just another step in the trial and error, rather than a negative to rub in the player's face when they miss a jump. This kind of trial by death type platforming reminds me of another game that I love, Super Mario Maker. In Super Mario Maker, there is a vast expanse of fan-made levels that are extremely difficult and expect you to die as you progress and to figure out the mechanics. And this is the defining distinction between games like Celeste or Mario Maker and traditional platformers. In a traditional platformer, death usually takes a fair amount of time between dying and getting back into the level. For example, in Sonic Mania, another extremely well-made 2D platformer that I couldn't recommend enough, dying is much more infrequent. But when you do eventually die, it takes a whopping 7 seconds to respawn, and it starts you at the beginning of the level. In comparison, Celeste only takes 1. On top of that, the game has been designed to be tackled in small bites rather than long endurance tests. Each room is its own self-contained challenge that offers its own reset point if you die. So dying does not cause either a waste of time or a loss of progress, which does wonders for the player's sense of progression. I cannot tell you how many times I have been playing a hard game only to be stopped at the very end of my run by something that is difficult to practice because it's hard to get to. That's kind of a poor explanation, but let's look at an example to really explore this. Another game that I play frequently is Beat Saber. I really enjoy playing on Expert and Expert Plus maps, but sometimes I'll be absolutely killing it up until about 3 minutes into a song, and then out of nowhere, a difficulty spike will end my run and I'll be back at square one. Since getting that far in is difficult as is for me, being stopped right before the end is extremely disheartening and leads to more frustration. However, in Celeste, the difficulty is mostly all up front. There are very few rooms that last long enough to instill this sense of dread and frustration, so I feel more motivated to keep trying in any given room over and over. Even though the challenge may be difficult, I know that it's short, at least until the next checkpoint. So, if I can just be good enough to do it once, even as a fluke or pure luck, that still counts. I think this is excellent design for games in general, but specifically it's great design for people like me, who love a challenging game, but aren't very good at beating challenging games. In fact, I think that statement is rather representative of all of Celeste in a way. Recently, I heard Celeste described as the most difficult game that everyone can beat, and I think it is a perfect evaluation. Celeste presents its difficulty in a way that makes it accessibly challenging. Now, what exactly do I mean by accessible challenge, you might ask? Well, to answer that, let's look at another one of my passions, fighting games. Everybody knows that fighting games are hard for casual players. It's one of the biggest reasons that the FGC is so small. These games are challenging, which people like, but they aren't always accessible. In fact, it's been a massive point of contention recently between keeping difficulty in fighting games or purposefully watering down mechanics to appeal to new players. Now, this comparison can't exactly be one-to-one, because Celeste is not a competitive fighting game, but Celeste does manage to sidestep this dichotomy entirely by treating the player differently than other games when they die. This is inherently tied to the narrative of the game, and I think it's genius. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, Celeste is about a girl who climbs a mountain, and as such, determination is a massive factor of the narrative. Resolve in the face of an unknowable challenge is at the very core of the game, and it makes sure that the player knows that. For all of the implicit work that the game does through level design and death mechanics, it also does in more direct terms. The game straight up tells the player to be proud of their deaths, as each one represents an experience that you learned from. It also does this a bit more subtly as the story progresses. Over the course of the story, we see Madeline face her insecurities and her anxieties head on, and it is extremely inspiring. Madeline wishes to climb Mount Celeste to prove to herself that she can do it, which directly coincides with the player's desire to overcome the difficult platforming puzzles. Now sure, many people will have many different reasons for playing, but when you're on your 50th death in the same room, frustrated beyond belief, it's that shared determination between the player and the main character that can be the boost you need to beat the level. Now, of course, it should go without saying that Madeline's character arc in Celeste is much more well thought out than just a clever metaphor for the player. In fact, I would go as far as to say that it is one of the best depictions of depression, anxiety, and other issues that I have seen in a video game up to this point. And with the recent news dropped by the creator, I feel that this narrative is only strengthened. If it wasn't obvious by the nature of this video, I really love Celeste. It's my favorite platformer of all time, and I could go on and on about it for as long as I liked. But were I to allow myself to ramble, I would surely take this video entirely off topic. So in the interest of brevity, I'll cut it here. If you saw the gameplay and think it looks appealing or interesting, I can't recommend it enough. It's absolutely worth the $20, and it's on just about every platform. So if you want to get into this game, there's really no excuse not to. Also, if the difficulty is something that worries you, I implore you to challenge yourself and see how far you can make it. I know I certainly surprised myself, and you might too. If you find yourself stuck and you just can't progress, they have really good accessibility features that allow players to move at their own pace and tackle difficulty in a way that suits them through its assist mode. It's for accessibility reasons like those and game design reasons like the ones that we just talked about that I truly believe that Celeste is the perfect platformer. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you liked what I had to say, make sure to leave me a like so I know I'm doing something right. If you want to catch more of my videos, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload. I also have a Twitter and an Instagram if that interests you. Links to those will be below. But with all that YouTube stuff out of the way, I just want to say thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.